You know, there are moments in history that change everything. Well, this is the story of one of the biggest. We're talking about the largest, most secret, and frankly, most consequential scientific project ever. It's an incredible story that literally harnessed the power of the universe to create a weapon that was almost unimaginable. Today, we're going to dive deep into the Manhattan Project, how it started, how on Earth they pulled it off, and how it completely redefined our world.
So, to really get the Manhattan Project, you kind of have to start at the end, with the absolutely world-altering weapon it created. I mean, this was not just another military program. No way. This was a fundamental shift in the course of human history, the moment we as a species actually gained the power to wipe ourselves out.
These words, they're from an ancient Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, and they're what popped into the mind of the project's lead scientist, the brilliant and very complex J. Robert Oppenheimer, right as he saw that first atomic explosion. It's a quote that just perfectly captures the terrifying, awe-inspiring reality of what they had just done. Just try to picture this for a second. It's dawn in the New Mexico desert. And then boom, the Trinity test unleashes a fireball that literally vaporizes a steel tower and turns the sand underneath it into glass. The shockwave was felt over 100 miles away. The atomic age didn't just quietly begin, it arrived with an absolutely deafening roar.
And of course, Trinity was just the dress rehearsal. Only weeks later, this same terrifying power was unleashed for real on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing World War II to a sudden, brutal end. But a power like this, it doesn't just spring out of nowhere. So how did it happen? How did we get here? To figure that out, we have to go back to the beginning.
So what was the driving force behind this massive effort? You might think it was a desire for a new, more powerful weapon, but it really wasn't. It all boiled down to one single, incredibly powerful emotion: fear. A deep, paralyzing fear of what the enemy might be building first.
Okay, so here's how it all started. Back in 1938, German scientists figured out nuclear fission, basically how to split an atom and release a ton of energy. Now, with war brewing, this discovery sent a massive shockwave through the scientific community. Physicists, especially those who had fled fascism in Europe, knew exactly what this could mean. Even Albert Einstein, a lifelong pacifist, was so worried that he signed a letter to President Roosevelt, warning him that Nazi Germany could be building an atomic bomb. The threat was terrifyingly real. The race was on.
And you know, this wasn't just an American thing. It was a huge collaboration with the UK and Canada, all of them driven by that same urgent fear. The mission couldn't have been clearer, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Build the bomb before Hitler does. Period.
All right, so winning this race meant pulling off an industrial effort on a scale the world had literally never seen before. And the craziest part? The whole thing had to be done in total, absolute secrecy.
So get this. At its peak, the Manhattan Project employed almost 130,000 people. To put that in perspective, that's more people than lived in a decent-sized city back then. We're talking construction workers, scientists, secretaries, military police, the whole shebang. And the vast majority of them had absolutely no clue what they were working on. They just knew their one tiny specific piece of the puzzle.
And the cost? Just as mind-boggling. It was about $2 billion at the time, which in today's money is somewhere around $28 billion. Think about that. It was a gigantic national gamble, betting a fortune on a theoretical weapon that, for all they knew, might not even work.
Now, to make all this happen, the government literally built entire cities from scratch and hid them from the world. You had Oak Ridge, Tennessee, a secret city of 75,000 people that existed only to enrich uranium. Then there was the Hanford site out in Washington, with these giant reactors built to create plutonium. And then way up on a remote mesa in New Mexico, you had Los Alamos. This was the secret brain of the operation, the lab where the bombs were actually designed and assembled.
The whole operation was run with an iron fist. On the military side, you had Major General Leslie Groves, the ultimate no-nonsense project manager. And on the science side, you had J. Robert Oppenheimer, who led the incredible team of geniuses at Los Alamos. Security was everything. The project lived by a policy called compartmentalization, which meant you only knew exactly what you needed to do your job and not one single thing more. It was one of the best-kept secrets of the entire war.
So that's the who and where. But what about the how? How did they actually build this thing? Well, the main scientific challenge was just getting enough of the right kind of fuel to create a nuclear chain reaction.
The magic ingredient is something called fissile material. See, the uranium you dig out of the ground is mostly useless for a bomb. You need this very rare version or isotope called uranium-235. The other option was to create a whole new element in a reactor, plutonium-239. The problem? Both of them are incredibly hard to produce.
So with all this uncertainty hanging over their heads, the leaders made a really critical decision. They decided not to put all their eggs in one basket. Instead, they'd go after both uranium and plutonium at the exact same time. This meant they had to design two totally different kinds of bombs simultaneously.
And the two bombs they came up with were just radically different. Little Boy, the one used on Hiroshima, was a pretty simple gun-type device. It basically fired one piece of uranium into another to start the chain reaction. But Fat Man, the Nagasaki bomb, was way more complicated. It used a sphere of conventional explosives that had to detonate perfectly to crush a plutonium core. I mean, it was an enormous engineering headache.
You see, the uranium gun design was so simple, the scientists were pretty sure it would work without a test. But the plutonium implosion bomb, that was a huge gamble. Nobody was 100% certain it could even be done. And that's exactly why the Trinity test had to happen. They had to know if this incredibly complex gadget, as they called it, would actually go off.
Well, as we know, the Trinity test worked. The bombs were dropped, the war was over. But the world was changed forever. And we were all left with a new legacy of incredible power, but also profound fear. When you look back, the project's legacy is really complex, full of contradictions. I mean, on one hand, it achieved its main goal. It ended World War II. It also created this whole network of national labs that are still driving American science today. But at the same time, it kicked off the atomic age, which led directly into the Cold War and a nuclear arms race that kept the entire planet on edge for the next 50 years.
So, in just a few short, frantic years, the Manhattan Project took physics theory and turned it into a world-shattering reality. It absolutely delivered victory in the war, but it also left all of humanity with this deep, nagging question that we're still grappling with today. How do we live with what we've created?